Okay, Brian, you can go ahead.
Okay, thanks, James. I want to welcome everybody to the St. Catharines Heritage Advisory Committee meeting for Thursday, May the 30th. My clock says it's 2:32, and we have quorum, so we'll get the show on the road. We begin this gathering by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. And acknowledging this reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of Indigenous peoples. Do we have any additions to be made to the agenda?
I'm not aware of any.
Yeah. The only thing I was going to say under the part where I'm talking about the Darby Cemetery that I wanted to talk about Hofstadter as well.
Sure, no problem.
That means we had both the GPRs done on the same day, so thought I'd talk about each of them.
And could I?
So,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Finish up. Finish. Sorry, Brian. Finish.
yep. So can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Well, no, I'd like to add something at the end.
Oh.
So some questions, if I could, about Port Dalhousie. Actually, that's why I was hoping that Carlos would be here. So just some general questions.
Do you want to put
Sure.
that on correspondence or?
Sure, whatever. Well, no, well, wherever
We
James.
can tack it on to the end as 7.8. How about that?
Okay, fine, whatever.
7.8 will be Gail. Okay. So if there's nothing else, can I have a motion to adopt or to approve the agenda? John Crawley, thank you. And all in favor? Done. Motion to adopt the minutes of the previous meeting from April the 25th. Were there any questions, comments, changes? Gail.
Just the silly little typos under number 3. Hofstadter Cook is in uppercase C, uppercase O, uppercase and lower, and there's a period in the sentence before it that's added, but they're just minor things.
Okay, thanks, Gail. I'll take a look.
And under number 5, it says that I would like to see reflected in the minutes that you would be sending CHO materials to everybody, and I don't know if that will happen now.
Okay, no problem. I will make sure that that's reflected.
Okay.
So if there's nothing else, then I guess we need to have a motion to approve the amended minutes.
I'll make the motion since I.
Gail, thank you. And all in favor? Okay, done. Declarations of interest. Do we have any conflicts or declarations to be made? And seeing none, I assume we can then just move on to item 7.1, the Heritage Grant application for 95 Main Street, which is a porch repair, I guess. Yep. Beautiful house.
Yeah, so we have Janet Anderson is here. Janet, can you see my screen, what I'm sharing?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so I'll just run through the photos and you can kind of explain what's going on with the porch.
Okay, we're in Port Dalhousie. It's a heritage home, it's listed. The wraparound porch is rotting. The deck, the bottom of the posts, and some of the spindles have rotted. And we have the deck itself is rotten. There are some places where it's gone through, other places where it's soft. The whole thing needs to be replaced for the decking. On that corner there, because it has sunk, we need to prop up the roof and make it straight and level again. We're looking at restoring it to its original look. We will be getting new footings made with concrete, and we'd like to replace the framing underneath. We don't really know what we're going to find when we open it up, but the plan is to replace the framing with pressure treated wood and then top the deck with 1.5-inch white cedar, tongue and groove. And then we've located a place that could, it's a mill where we can replace some of the spindles that are damaged. And we just have to take one into them and they will turn some new spindles for us. You can see in the photo, the one on the left is just hanging there. It's rotted right through. And so we're doing everything to match the original. There is a photo that I sent to James that shows the house from about 100 years ago. The house is about 140 years now. And we love it. So we want to make it true and sound and make that porch as spectacular as it shows there. So we've got a quote for $12,000, and I understand that $5,000 is the maximum grant. We're prepared for that, and we don't have a final price on how many spindles we need, and so it will go above 12,000. But we're hoping that we are successful in getting a grant. We've previously had a grant to repair our chimney on the back of the house, and I was surprised to see it as part of the heritage guidelines, a photo of our new chimney on the back. So yeah, we're very aware of the heritage value of the house and to keep it looking as close to original as possible. Pretty simple.
Great, thanks, Janet.
Do you have any questions or comments about the proposal? Lorraine.
Thank you, Brian. Jeanette, I really thought that the pictures that you sent were totally illustrative of the need for the repair. Very clearly see that they need to be repaired, that they're rotted and that they're not in great shape. So I wanted to thank you for that. And also for this historic picture. I think everyone on the committee really enjoyed seeing that. So thank you for that picture as well. I would definitely support the motion. Or we don't have a motion yet. I would support the idea of giving you some funding.
Thank you.
Are any of the rotted or the spindles that are going to be replaced, are you going to save any parts of them that are worth saving?
Now, the posts in particular, the tall posts, we don't really want to replace them totally because the bottom portion, I think it's about 2.5 feet, is actually a square section. So what we're looking to do is to get the mill up in Bancroft that we've contacted to mill some square cedar to match to just below that part where the flare happens. And then we'll repair that. We'll replace that and sand it and paint it so you can't see the joint. Of course, that will require the contractor to prop up the roof while the work is being done, and he's well versed in how to do that. So we're hoping, that would be a pretty easy fix. We'll have to take the railings off and the existing spindles and replace them, the ones that are damaged.
Right. Okay. John Crawley.
Yes, looking at the historical photograph, it looks like the porch is raised up on some small footings, but your current photos show the porch is almost sitting on the ground. I'm suggesting that maybe you put some kind of other footings underneath or raise it up again to look like it did before. Because even if it's pressure treated wood, it's still going to rot eventually.
Yeah, and we've discussed that, and I think it's primarily due to the fact that the garden has risen. We're going to dig away the garden from the edge of the porch there and make sure that it's not covering the footings there.
Okay.
Do you have any other questions? And if not, then I guess we need a motion to approve the $5,000 grant for the porch repair.
Yep, so I've put it on the screen now that the SCHAC approves a grant of $5,000 for porch repairs or for porch repair work for 95 Main Street.
Does somebody wish to make that motion? Lorraine? And all in favor? Done.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jeanette. I'll be in touch tomorrow about next steps.
Excellent. Thank you very much, everyone.
Great. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Were we going to 7.2 now, or do the Bayview one?
I think given how the 33 Bayview might be a lengthier chat, and I don't want to hold Howard up too long. And I think the discussion around the synagogue could be relatively quick, but we still want to give it the time it deserves. I prefer to do that one first before we do Bayview.
Okay. So, James, you want to lead the discussion?
Yeah, sure. So through the chair, so today we have basically a designation report before the committee to designate the B'nai Israel Synagogue. So Howard Slepkov is here. He's the president of the synagogue. I'll introduce him, and he'll say a few words about initiating this process and what he was hoping to achieve with it. Essentially, it's the 100th anniversary of this building, and so it's a great time to finally get around to designating it because it's certainly a building that merits it. And so I'll turn it over to Howard, and he can say a few words. Then I'll run through kind of a high level just overview of the report. And I've circulated the report to everybody. I know it's a little lengthy, but it's an interesting read, I think. But Howard, it's your floor.
Okay, thank you very much, James. I have to tell you that a number of people have talked about how fascinating they found the report that you prepared, the pictures and the details and everything. It's just percolated through the congregation because, as you know, I had to get the congregation in the whole to approve of the process. So I began thinking about this before the pandemic because we're now the last standing synagogue in the Niagara Peninsula. The Port Colborne community doesn't have a synagogue. Welland, they closed up a long time ago. Niagara Falls, they've sold their property. And so we are the last official house of worship for the Jewish community in the Niagara, in all of the Niagara Peninsula. And it represents a trend across Canada and across North America that we raise our children to be citizens of the world and well educated. And of course, they're not happy with staying in St. Catharines. They're very seldom satisfied. And businesses are no longer mom and pop operations. They're parts of large corporations, and the administrators are always on the move. Our congregation, actually, the building that you're considering, the foundation, the cornerstone was laid on September the 14th, 1924. And there was a gala celebration when the congregation took possession of the synagogue proper in June the 22nd of 1925. So we're approximately going to keep within those terms and celebrate in the fine style our 100th anniversary. It's quite an achievement to have a congregation last that long. And actually, we've got 5 generations of families that still are members. It's our hope that through the various projects we have, we will be able to raise enough money to take the synagogue back, the sanctuary especially, back to the way it looked in 1925. We submitted an application to the Trillium Foundation. They had a program that offered exactly what we were looking for, money to refurbish used religious spaces so that they could be then more useful to the community. So between the $200,000 grant we get from the Trillium Foundation, fingers crossed, and the money we raised, the proceeds we raised from our concert and reception and the sale of a souvenir booklet, we should be in fine shape. The last time the sanctuary was painted was 50 years ago. The roof is the biggest problem. It always has been, but hopefully we'll have enough money to fix that up, repaint the sanctuary, attend to all of the physical structure needs, and then having it designated as a historical site that will attract attention to the history of the Jewish community in St. Catharines. And I'll end only by saying that all of you, because you make it your business to know that the world is not in a good place right now, especially with the war in the Middle East and the rise of anti-Semitism. I found myself telling people we're back to the way we were 100 years ago when the synagogue was first put up. In order to put up the synagogue, a building that they were using, rented, a house at the corner of Church and Calvin Street, had to be moved back, had to be purchased and moved back. And when the congregation went to purchase that house, the owner of the building would not sell to us because we were Jewish. And so another member of the community had to be found who would buy it and then sell it to the Jewish community. That house was moved back. And unfortunately today, there are far too many cases where people are being denied access to cultural events, to book publishing, to membership in all kinds of organizations because they are Jewish. So I'm hoping that in our own small community of St. Catharines, small but growing, designating the synagogue as a historical site, celebrating our 100th anniversary, and getting a grant to fix up the synagogue will attract a great deal of attention to a building that adds to the historical depth of this community. I think I've said enough, James. I'll
No,
answer
thanks.
questions if anybody has any questions, though.
Thanks, Howard. I think I'm going to do a quick presentation for everybody, just an overview of the report, and then we'll take questions after if anybody has any. Sound good?
Fine by me, thanks.
So I'll just put it up on the screen. It's a lengthy report. I think it was about 40 or so pages. So trying to summarize all that in a few slides for everybody. But essentially, the timelines for how this kind of worked out, this was a little bit different in that we had actually a property owner, in this case, the synagogue, who came to us asking if they could have the property designated. And so in March of last year, myself and Brian met with Howard at the synagogue, and we met and we kind of discussed what is a designation, what does it involve, what would it look like. We kind of got the ball rolling there. Later that summer and into the fall, I met with the congregation, I think at least 2 or 3 times, just to answer questions, address any concerns. They were generally very positive discussions, and the people who had concerns were very respectful and had very good reasons for why they had concerns. And ultimately, I think a lot of good came out of it because obviously we were able to proceed forward. Earlier this year in February, the designation subcommittee went on site and got to see the building for themselves. After that, I started writing the report with Brian's help, and the evaluation report went to the designation subcommittee in April, where they recommended that this building merits designation. And just last week, if I'm not mistaken, or 2 weeks ago, the congregation voted to proceed with the designation. So throughout this process, actually, what we wanted to do, because the congregation was the one bringing this forward. We wanted to make sure, or I wanted to make sure at least, that this was an inclusive situation, that we were working with the members of the synagogue to determine what's important to the synagogue congregation, what attributes should be reflected in the final designation bylaw, and there were also concerns from the group as well about, well, what if our synagogue, if the members of the synagogue move elsewhere in the future, if the congregation gets smaller and we have to find a new location or combine with another group, what happens to some of these important features? And so made sure that that everybody was on the same page about what those would look like, and I'll discuss them a little bit later as well. So the staff report found that in terms of the research and evaluation, the property met 8 of the 9 criteria for designation. So overwhelming, fantastic building, probably one of the real gems in the city, really. For it to meet 8 of the 9 just speaks to how important this building is in the community, and the stature of its architecture, and the way that it's been kept over the years too. It's largely in original condition, except for a few changes. These little domes here, or not little, they're rather large domes actually, used to be on top of the building, and they were removed, I believe, in the 60s. And Howard can correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah. So, but largely for the most part, the building is rather unchanged and in good condition. There was an addition that was constructed beside it that was reflective of kind of the post-war boom that we saw, where they needed more space. That portion is not part of the designation. Really, it's the original building that is part of it, and that was kind of decided in discussions with the congregation, and I think that's completely fair. So as I mentioned, research was conducted by myself and Brian, and there was significant help as well from Howard's book, A Future in Doubt. And I don't know if it sounds like a lot of people have a copy of it, but if you don't have it, let me know. I'm happy to share my copy. Fantastic book about the history of the Jewish community in St. Catharines and the history of this church, or this synagogue. And it really was a helpful tool, because it's very rare that we have an entire book dedicated to a property. And so to be able to tap into that, I mean, we could really just append that book to the bylaw if we wanted to, because it really does speak volumes for how much history there is here. So looking at more the 906 evaluation, in terms of architectural value, it's a unique example of an Art Deco style synagogue, and it's representative of a 1920s religious institutional building. It displays a high degree of craftsmanship and artistic merit through a number of its architectural features, including the facade, the arc, which is inside, the stained glass, which is throughout the building, and there are interior details like woodwork, plaster caps, and so on that exhibit high degrees of craftsmanship. So here are just a few of the photos that I've pulled out of the report. Essentially, this arc is fantastic, and when you're in the space, this doesn't do it justice, I think. It really is to be honest, it's a piece of art itself. I feel like it's such a well-crafted feature, and it's right at the forefront of this of the like when you walk into the space, it's the first thing you see, and it's fantastic. In the ceiling here, we have a really gorgeous stained glass Star of David, which is just fantastic and in great condition. In terms of historical value, its associated value comes from its direct relationship to the Jewish community in St. Catharines. It's also a Nicholson and Macbeth design. Nicholson and Macbeth, obviously the foremost architects in the city. And luckily, in this case, we even had the original drawings, which were fantastic. And it actually really does show how little has changed over the years, because very little of this drawing is no longer there. It's really just these large domes that have been removed. It was also constructed by the Newman brothers, who were a very large construction firm in the city and were involved in a lot of projects. Its contextual value, it contributes to the character of Church Street. Church Street being where a lot of our most prominent religious buildings are. Obviously, this is a little bit outside the downtown, so it's not part of that immediate stretch that we all think of of church, kind of closer to around City Hall. But it's called Church Street for a reason, right? And this extends that out towards the East End a little bit. And it's also a landmark in the city, and in particular for the Jewish community. So 8 out of 9 in terms of meeting the criteria. That's pretty much a slam dunk in my book in terms of whether a property merits designation. And so looking at the heritage attributes, I'll run through these really quickly. So the height, form, and massing of the original synagogue building, the symmetrical front facade, the use of brick and cut stone materials, the leaded glass windows arranged in tall and thin fenestration patterns and grouped together in a symmetrical manner, the rounded arched windows on the east and west bays of the front facade and grouped in pairs and trios, the entrance with its poured concrete steps and parapets, wooden doors, cut stone columns, and brick and stone portico, the cut stone banding that is located on all the elevations, and the arched brick and stone motif above the banding on the front elevation. And then because you know, a lot of religious buildings in the city have interior features as well, and this one definitely merits it. And so the sanctuary space is part of the designation, and that includes the square shape of the sanctuary, the second floor mezzanine with brass rails, the wooden floor and wooden doors that provide access to the sanctuary, the ark and the dais, the ceiling with its recessed portion with a wooden and stained glass Star of David, the four columns with decorative plaster caps, the rounded light fixtures with metal caps, the ornate metal chandeliers, and the wooden benches with a carved Star of David at each end. Also, outside of the sanctuary, there's the wooden staircases that provide access to the mezzanine and the lower level, including their configuration and railings and balustrades. And the wooden doors in the basement level that were previously the entrances to the men's and women's washrooms identified by Yiddish text. So, as I mentioned earlier, there were some concerns about certain attributes and whether or not the congregation could bring them with them if they ever wanted to move. So, as part of that, we've ensured that in the designation bylaw, in the attributes, this kind of note is included as well. So, it could happen 50 years from now when none of us are, involved in this project or involved with this property, right? So, it wanted to make sure that it was clear to, future staff and future members of the congregation, kind of what decisions were made today. And so it was determined that interior attributes such as the ark, the dais, benches, and chandeliers that are at ground level, because there are chandeliers that have been taken down and are just at ground level, essentially. Those are all permitted to leave the sanctuary should the congregation move to a new site and wish to take these attributes with them. And I felt that that was fair because, one, this is a process that they're initiating. And so I think it's important that, if these features are important to them, that they take ownership of them. And I also feel like if these are features that are important to the congregation, they're probably most important to the congregation, right? And so whatever the next iteration of the building might be 50 100 years from now, if heaven forbid the congregation ever moves, I think a lot of these features would be most important to the Jewish community. And so with that, I really want to say thanks to Howard for one, initiating this process, and also for this wonderful book that I'm going to plug a little bit as well, because it is a fantastic read, and we don't have a lot of books about buildings in this city, and it really is a fantastic piece of work. So really appreciate that, and I'm happy to take any questions, and as Howard mentioned, he's happy to take some questions as well if anybody has any.
Thanks, James. Yeah, so does anybody have questions or comments?
Oh, Andrew.
Andrew.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I agree this is an important designation, and from a technical standpoint, James referenced that it met 8 of 9 criteria, which is rare and significant. But the designation of any property of historic significance is meaningful both to the people who are immediately associated with it, such as the congregation, the past, present, and future, but also to the community at large. So I think we all benefit when a building like this is recognized. And it's also important to note that it reflects the recognition of an often underrepresented community here in St. Catharines, part of our local history, and a move towards a more contemporary and inclusive approach to preservation. It's definitely overdue, and I hope that we see more designation applications like this in the future. And also, thank you, Howard, for mentioning the timeliness of this recognition in a time when anti-Semitism has flared up again around the world. And it's important to remember that we're not immune from that here in quiet little St. Catharines, and we always have to be aware of these things and be mindful of them. And I hope that recognition of this building and the history of it and the community around it will be a little little statement that we're collectively making as a community here in St. Catharines about where we stand on that and how we feel about that. So it would have been nice to see this building designated a little while ago, but there's a timeliness to doing it right now. So I'm glad you didn't get to it before the pandemic. That's it. I support the designation completely.
Okay, thanks, Senator. If there's no other,
Gail
okay.
has her hand up.
I'd also like to thank Howard but James and Brian for all of the work they put into this. I mean, I know the building a little bit and I agree with everything that's being said, and I certainly support this designation.
Howard, you have a comment?
Yeah, I wanted to add, sorry, I wanted to add that in the Jewish Community Center, which was built in the 50s, there have been several changes, and I took the time to take one of the original classrooms, and it is now a museum room. And one of my goals is that with the historical designation and the increased awareness by the Ministry of Education to include expectations in the grade 6 and the grade 10 curriculum documents about the Jewish community in Canada and in Ontario and in the local community, that there will be an increased interest in the synagogue as a historical site. And I'm certainly building the groundwork for a place for people to come and see its evolution and the place we played in the growth of the wider community of St. Catharines, especially the downtown core.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so I guess if there's nothing else, we should have a motion to recommend the designation.
Yep, so it's on the screen now that the SCHAC recommends the designation of 190 Church Street, which is B'nai Israel Synagogue, under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. And so this will essentially go to council next month for a notice of intention to designate. And then at least 30 days later, it'll go back again for the final passing of the bylaw.
So who of us wishes to make the motion? I think I saw Robert Speck's hand go up first. So all in favor? Done.
Great. Thanks, Howard. Thanks for attending.
My pleasure. Thank you very much, everyone. Just to clarify, when James said that it took several meetings, first my executive had to discuss it, then the board had to discuss it, then the general community had to discuss it, and then after that, I had to have another meeting with the same three stages for the presentation of the report. So we've had more than a few meetings.
Yeah, I got to meet a lot of the members. It was
Yeah,
they're a great group.
James attended every single one on behalf of all of you. So it's been a long road. So thank you very much, everybody. I'll
Thank
wish
you
you
all.
well, and I'll say goodbye.
Yeah, thanks, Howard. Take care.
Thanks, Howard. Nice to see you again.
Nice
Bye.
to see you too,
Nice to see
Lorraine.
you, Howard.
See you, Gail. See
Yeah.
everybody.
Okay.
Thanks, James. Thanks.
No problem.
A
Yes,
million
thanks,
doesn't
James.
count. Thanks so much.
Okay, moving on to 7.3, 33 Bayview. We have a demolition application.
Yeah, so I believe Jürgen is here. Jürgen, are you still here?
He's,
I see him still logged in, but Jürgen, can you hear us?
mm.
Oh, there we go.
Oh,
Can you
there
see
we
me
go.
now?
Yep. Yep.
More clear?
I can hear you. Yes.
Okay, and wait 1 second here. I'm still struggling with this new technology. My apologies.
That's okay. Can you see my screen at least?
Yes, I can see. Can you see me now?
Yes, we can. Yes.
Okay, perfect.
So you can go ahead when you'd like.
Okay, yeah, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jurgen. I am the owner of 33 Bayview. I think I've met most of you on site at one time or several times at 33 Bayview. So, unfortunately, Carlos, my architect, was not unable to attend today. He sort of had more of the technical information regarding the actual plans and whatnot. Anyway, I just want to start off by saying that we're not trying to change the charm of Port Dalhousie, but add to it by creating a new beautiful home which actually fits in with the neighborhood. I think I've already demonstrated this with a property at 8 Shelley. I believe most of you have seen, where we took an old dilapidated, falling apart property and basically constructed a new home which fits in with the Port Dalhousie charm and also enhances the neighborhood. I think a few of you, or maybe most of you, have seen the end result, and now we've got a wonderful family who lives in that home. So, excuse me, I'm a little nervous when doing this stuff on. Just please bear with me. So I guess the problem right now with Bayview. So we've already had approved plans through the Heritage Committee with the existing structure to do a partial demolition and pick up and move the front portion of the house and move it back on the property once a proper foundation has been dug and poured, and then place that on top of it, and then build on to the rest of the existing home. However, now the problem is, once we have started actually doing some more, preparatory work of the existing structure, it's become quite evident that it's heavily deteriorated and rotted to the point where it's just not safe. I guess our problem is, how can the existing structure be reinforced and made code compliant without tearing it down or leaving it in situ? But basically, we don't see any options as how to do that. I'm sorry, I'm just got my notes here. So as reported in the structural report of bullet number 3, the existing, this is from Sam, our structural engineer's report. The existing foundation right now is not even 4 feet deep, and it is affected by the freeze and thaw shifting. And that was evident on the northeast wall, where that wall is actually bowing out on the structure. And at one point, they took 2x6s, a number of them, and with posts, they actually are using that to hold that section of the wall in. Now, also, I'm sorry. Now, as far as the supporting structure, the house itself was it's not even 2x4 frame construction. They actually used posts and beams, and there are a number of pictures, I think James has them, where the supporting beams and posts are completely rotten right through. And the exterior shell of the house has also, you can see in this picture right above, yes. So that right there, what we're looking at, that vertical beam right there is holding up the second floor. And then you can see the post underneath, right in the middle, that is supporting the beam. So the problem is, how do we actually get in there and remove that beam to properly support the second addition without basically you have to tear it all apart to actually get in there to properly support it. And I believe there's some pictures in here which also show the bottom sill plate. No, that's actually, well, there's more of the top beam, but I'm talking about now the foundation, where the foundation sits. Yes, right there. So on the picture on the left, you can see there's the bottom sill plate, which was a beam sitting on the foundation. It's completely rotten, and then you can see the floor joists that are no longer even sitting on top of that beam because of the shift in the foundation. It's just the whole wall has pushed right out. So the problem is, how do we actually replace all this and get in there to fix it all? It's virtually impossible. So as far as the foundation, it's also in Sam's report. I believe it is bullet number 3. Again, the foundation is heavily deteriorated, and because it's not below the frost line, it shifts back and forth, causing all kinds of damage. Now, I think a number of you might remember the issues we had over at Shelley Avenue, or 8 Shelley, where we went through the same process. We had approval where we needed to keep an existing front section of the house. And to do that, we had to reinforce the existing foundation that was there, and which was it was basically a crawl space. Now, back in the day, what they did was they actually dug a trench 12 inches wide by 4 inches deep, and then they poured in concrete, and there was all kinds of other things they mixed in, like bricks and other debris. So when we actually tried to do the work to dig down to underpin and support the existing structure, as we dug, it just all fell apart. It crumbled. We don't even have this here at 33 Bayview. It's basically sitting on rocks without any kind of a foundation. So I guess the problem is, without tearing it all apart, how do we actually get underneath to dig down and pour a new foundation? Because as far as from our structural report, it also states in there that the conditions basically make it impossible to lift the structure so that we can actually carry on to dig in a new foundation and pour a proper foundation to support the existing structure. So I guess that takes us to our plan. So our plan is, we still want to stick with the existing approved plan through Heritage. However, with the modification that instead of lifting that existing home and moving it, we would just like to be able to take it down and just reconstruct it to the plan specs, but using new code compliant building materials, which is definitely needed with the structure. I hope I'm sort of clear on what we do. I'm sorry, I'm just a little bit nervous here. Anyway, yes.
Jürgen, were there any of these other photos did you want to speak to? I'll just run through them quickly, and you can.
I think most of you have actually seen, here above, you can see the studs that are there above the window. It's not properly supported. You can see, like in the middle there's the bottom of the stud is completely missing, and this is throughout the whole structure. Where we have these issues where the studs are actually rotted out on the top and bottom and middle, and you can see that window is just put in. There's nothing there supporting that second floor. And then Sam also noted, Sam, our structural engineer, He also noted that the floor joists supporting the second floor, one, are not, I guess, they're too long, and they just, and the distance, that distance in between those floor joists right there is about 20 to 24 inches. And that will never support a second story. And you can see where these floor joists are also cut out. The problem again, how do we actually replace these without dismantling the existing structure? This would never pass today's code, and you can see in the bottom picture here. I don't know if you, maybe down to the bottom right, you can see. No,
Sorry.
up a little bit.
Sorry.
Yes, this picture here. Yep. In that picture to the right, you can actually see where pieces of building material were heavily charred, where they just took bits and pieces of things, and used it just to, makeshift to, put the house together. So over the years, there's been many additions and alterations made to the home, and now it's just not adequate anymore. We just want to be able to make a home that is safe and, yes, and code compliant, right? And something that is going to fit in with the neighborhood. We're not trying to take away from the charm and put up some monstrous modern home. We're trying to keep with the aesthetic and stick with the Portaluzzi charm. And I think our plans do that. Yeah. Anyway, so all these pictures here, this picture right here, you can see this now post here. It's a 4x4 post. This is what's actually supporting the beam to support the second story. Again, it's not a traditional 2x4 construction, or 2x6 now is what they use, 10 inches on center. These were actually 4x4 posts. And here, this is a section of the flooring, which shows the flooring is actually buckling. And this is where the outside walls and everything are shifting because of the existing, I don't even want to call it a foundation, because it's not really a foundation. It's just sitting on a bunch of rocks, and it's not even dug down 4 feet. And so we can see everything is just shifting. And here again, there's a lot more rot. As far as I mentioned, when we had,
I think we lost Jurgen, I think. Yeah, it looks like we've lost Jurgen. Hopefully he'll join us again in a few seconds.
There he is.
Hi, Jurgen, can you hear us?
okay, there, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yep.
Yeah, we all of a sudden got disconnected there. I'm sorry, I'm not sure what happened there.
That's okay. So can you see my screen okay?
Yes, I can see that now. I'm
Okay.
actually I have you on my phone right now. So again, you can see it's just the conditions right now. They're just not adequate. And so we're actually looking at the inside, where I've actually taken down the old plaster and lath, and you can see the old shiplap for the exterior. And in a number of locations, that shiplap is completely dry rotted out as well. And again, how do we, the question is, how do we actually replace these beams and posts without tearing that all apart? Yes, actually, this picture here, top right-hand corner, if you zoom in, you can see the extent of the rot that's there. And it's not a matter of just bringing in new building materials and sistering up with the old, because that dry rot, it's actually a fungus and it will affect any new building materials. So basically it has to be removed. I know I've said a lot here.
No,
Oh,
that's
yes.
okay, Jürgen.
Now,
It's good to go through the photos. So
yes. Now this is the exterior wall, sort of the northeast corner. So right here, you will see that's a 2x6, and on the bottom there's another 2x6. This is what's actually holding in that wall, which is actually bowing out. Now that wall, I actually took a string line and ran a string line from the outside corners across, and that wall has actually shifted about a foot, where in the middle where the string is, that wall is 12 inches away from the string. So at one point what they did was they actually took 2x4 or 2x6s like this to hold that wall up, and again, it needs to be removed to actually try and fix it. And then at the bottom, it's all rotten underneath, where you stick your hand in there and it just comes apart by hand.
okay, those are the other photos are just extra photos that I had taken on site. So
Okay. Yeah.
Are there any questions from the group?
Yes.
Lorraine, I think, has
Yes,
her hand
first,
up.
okay.
So I have two questions. The first one is, you've shown us, and on my visit I saw as well, that most of the building material for that house is in very poor shape, including, the ones that looked like they had been burned. But I'm wondering if anything at all is usable, salvageable, and how you would use it. That's my first question.
Well, certainly some of those 4x4 posts and beams, like even this one in the front here where it's all rotten, we still might be able to salvage, even if it was like a 6-foot section of that. Now, there are other posts and beams that we would definitely love to put into, let's say, a coffered ceiling and in a dining room or the living room, and use those beams, or even a fireplace mantle. Of course, and any of those materials, yes, we would definitely salvage those and use and incorporate them to the interior of the home.
Okay, thank you. And then my second question is, and more for my own interest, was none of this seen before the purchase? Could you not detect the level of disrepair before the purchase?
No, because the walls were all covered in plaster and lath, and it wasn't until after we started doing some more investigating and opening up. Of course, when we purchased the house, there was an elderly lady who lived there for a number of years, and unfortunately, she passed away probably a year and a half ago. And so the house came up for sale, and the house, it was never looked after for a number of years, and then once we kind of had our suspicions prior to purchasing it. It's a beautiful piece of property. There's no doubt, where the location well, first of all, that it's in Port Dalhousie, and then that portion of Bayview, it's beautiful. So at that point, that's what attracted us to the property itself. And then next was, okay, what can we do with it? And with our investigation, that's where a lot of these other issues had come across. Like until we actually opened up the walls, you could not see the rot in behind.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. And just that has led to another question. Is it the front piece only that you're going to demolish and leave the back part, or the whole house?
The back, it would be that whole section. So the original plan that was approved through your Heritage Committee was to keep that section of the house, and then we were going to move it back and then and then add on, like move it back once a proper foundation was dug, and then put it on top of the foundation and build the rest of the house in behind. However, now once we actually started opening up walls, well, basically we can no longer pick up the house, because once we try to do that, it's going to fall apart. And the other issue is, how do we fix the rest of the issues in the house? Because it's rotting on the bottom, it's rotting on the top, it's rotting inside, it's rotting outside, and there's no way to actually support anything in there to actually, I guess to replace the beam which supports the second floor. How do you do that without tearing it apart? It's virtually, you can't. We can't even lift the house to put in a proper foundation to fix the problem of the existing foundation that's there, that's actually prone to shifting because the freeze and thaw in winter and winter and spring, and we can't even lift it to address that. So we basically want to just build it new and something that is safe, sound, and that fits in.
So demolish the entire structure.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Gail?
Yes, my questions are going to be very simplistic. When I visited last July with a number of you, you could see how difficult the inside was. I had a simple concern, thinking that you were going to go ahead with moving the whole thing back.
Yes.
Was to preserve those French doors. If you don't know if you recall that, I'd send them to restore.
And
I would like to know
what?
I would like to know if that's been done.
The French doors are sitting inside as we speak.
Okay.
They have not been disposed of. They were
Okay.
We took them off.
Yeah.
And they have been preserved. Yes. And there are 3 doors inside the house which are solid. They were the original doors, which we also want to save because they just don't make doors that way anymore.
Okay. That answers that.
Yeah. Yep.
Go
Sorry.
Finish. My next question is, why has it taken you 10 months to come to this point? Was nothing done for 3 or 4 months at a time, or what? Why has it taken since last July to come to the point where you've been able to discover all of this?
Well, okay, so we had another project on 8 Shelley Avenue. So we were more preoccupied with the construction. Now, we had delays on Shelley Avenue. We had about a 3-month delay because of the issues with the existing foundation there. And so most of our energy at that time was in getting Shelley done and then moving on to the next project.
Okay, that answers
And then,
that. I think.
yeah.
Okay. I don't want to spend other people's time on this.
Certainly.
Essentially, if we go for demolition, are you trying to produce an exact replica of this house?
Exactly. We are not looking to change the plan. The approved plans are what we are going with.
Okay.
We do not want to change that. We love the look of that house, and with the balcony up on top. And
I understand. Okay, that's great.
Yep.
You've answered my questions. I just want to make sure that any doors and anything that can go to Habitat for Humanity will be done.
It certainly will.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Other questions?
Sorry, Brian, you're sort of cutting out. So I think you asked, are there any other questions?
Any other questions? Yeah.
Yeah. David? Oh, you're on mute, David.
Apologies.
Oh, and now you're frozen, David.
And buying a house that has post and beam construction is not for the faint of heart. I bought the house a long time ago and have spent many multiples of what I paid for it in the first place, restoring it and keeping it in good shape. And I just wonder, and I don't, I understand both parts of it. I mean, there are some things that are very, very difficult to restore, but there are some things that you really should work at to restore because they're almost irreplaceable. I don't know what the age is on this house, but if it's post and beam, I would guess it's in the 1840s to 1860 range, and that seems sort of a shame to tear it down and put up a new house. But that's anyhow, my observation. Thank you.
Through the chair, just to clarify for David, I believe it's 1921. It's it's a post World War I house. Yeah.
Yep. May I,
using,
Brian, you're kind of cutting out, unfortunately. I don't know if anybody else can hear him.
Andrew?
He said Andrew.
I wasn't
Yes.
100% sure.
I think so. I think that's what I deciphered. Yeah.
Have you had any estimates done as to what it would cost to repair it, where it is, and who provided those quotations?
Can you hear me? Sorry, can you hear me?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. We can hear you. You're good.
Yeah. So we've had a couple of framing contractors out just to look at it. Again, the problem is, how do you actually do this without taking the existing structure apart? The outside, the shiplap, there are many areas where it's completely rotten. And how do you actually replace the beams and the posts and inside without taking apart? And then the big issue is the foundation itself. How do you actually get underneath there without lifting the structure to put in a proper foundation, which is actually going to support the existing structure there? So yes, we have had a couple of people out there, and they won't even touch it. And these are some good framers that we've used on past projects, and there's just it's virtually impossible to reinforce what's there. And so, we are unable to get a price for that, but we have tried.
One of my favorite lines from The Princess Bride is, "You keep using that word, but I do not think it means what you think it means." Nothing is impossible. Larger, more complicated buildings than this in worse condition have been repaired. It just comes down to a matter of money. And the reality is that oftentimes buildings get to a point where it's prohibitive to repair them. So they need to be demolished, even significant buildings, even buildings much more significant than this one. So for me, I really would like to understand what the financial burden of doing this is. If you've had people out who have said we don't want to touch it, you've had the wrong people out. There are people who can do this. There are people who will do this, and what I'm trying to understand is really how much financial hardship we would be visiting on you if we opposed this, because I think there has to be a limit to that. But I really would like to know exactly what we're dealing with to say that, because in terms of the repairs, in terms of the foundation, I'm sure many people here have seen magnificent photos of tremendous buildings lifted into the air, delicate buildings to repair crumbling foundations and so on and so forth. And if you haven't, I'd be happy to send you some. So it is possible. It's a matter of cost, and I'm just, there's a line, and we have to be responsible and fair to you, but we need to know exactly what we're dealing with. And I see the challenges of this. I genuinely do. I'm sympathetic to your situation, but I'm not yet convinced that we've reached the threshold where this building needs to be demolished. And you purchased an old building in difficult circumstances. You're now you're responsible for it, and that's that's part of what goes with this. So that's if you don't have an answer because you don't have the numbers, then that's fair. But I have trouble supporting a demolition without having more evidence that it's necessary.
You're on mute.
Oh, there. Yeah, I don't have those numbers. We have spoken to a few people, and even with the scope of work that we're doing right now, it's not cheap. And it's unfortunate that we did not we are unable to see the existing conditions right now, and the problem is how we're just trying to build a beautiful home that fits in with the Portaluzzi charm, and I think our plans show that, and I think we've already demonstrated this with number 8 Shelley. And number 8 Shelley, we had the approved plans, except now we're using new building materials, and anything that we can use from the existing structure and incorporate it into the new home, we will definitely do that.
Lorraine?
It's unfortunate that Mark isn't here today. When we went through our visit, Mark suggested some things that could be done and didn't think it was impossible to repair either. However, I don't want to speak for him in terms of what he suggested, but that was one of the things as well. And I wasn't around when 8 Shelley was redone. Was it the same sort of situation where it was demolished and then a new building was put up?
Eventually, yes. So with 8 Shelley, so there was a small cottage that was there. It was a very small home, and so we were going to keep the front facade. I think it was 14 feet of the existing, and it was going to be incorporated into a new structure built in behind it. So when it came time to do the work, we actually, there was it was a 12 or 14 feet of the front of the house was left there, but we had to get underneath to support the existing foundation, which was basically, it was a crawl space. And so once we actually started digging down and around the existing foundation to underpin to support the existing foundation, as we dug, it just all crumbled apart. And I think there was a number of you that were out there and could see how this foundation, it was impossible to reinforce the existing. So what we did was we went back to Heritage Committee, and they gave us the approval to take the rest of that down and then rebuild it exactly to the plan, but using new building materials.
Thank you. Sorry to take everybody's time for that, but I was just seeing if it was a sort of a parallel situation to this one. But thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Yeah, and as far as this one here, it's like I said, it's the lot that we love, and we were hoping to be able to move that house, and we're not looking to we've got the plans. We just want to use new materials and make it a code compliant safe home.
Maria?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Thank you. James, a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a set of criteria that would support a demolition according to the Act?
So the criteria for demolition, essentially in the Port Dalhousie Heritage District, the guideline is that demolition is discouraged. So that does leave wiggle room to be able to demolish buildings, and the committee has approved demolitions in the past. It's situations like this that I think the guidelines were intended to address, where there are issues with structural concerns and stuff like that. But there's nothing more definitive or stronger than that for the most part. It does say you should attempt to repair rather than replace. But obviously, as Andrew alluded to earlier, at some point there's a certain cost to that, right? So it's up to the committee, I guess, as a group to determine whether or not the threshold has kind of been met. And then ultimately it's up to council as well to determine whether or not. So this group will be making a recommendation to council about whether a demolition should be allowed.
Can
I
I
don't know
say
if
one
that.
thing?
Oh, sorry, Jürgen, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry to interrupt. So on the property to the right, I think it's number 30, is it 37 and a half? It's the one right beside our number 33. That was the same situation. There was an old 1930s home that was there, and basically it was in such poor condition that they had to basically take it down and then put up a new home beside it, and that's on the property beside us, which happened probably 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, so through the chair, this is
Yes,
an image from 2015. So that's the building that was previously demolished next door, and then you can see what it was replaced with today. So this actually I think was approved in 2018 or 19. So I don't know, maybe a couple members of the committee might remember it, but most of the committee wouldn't have been here for that.
And so they had I know the owners of that property, and they had a lot of the same issues. Just it was a dilapidated house that was just falling apart.
David Birkin?
Yeah, I'm wondering, is this the house on Shelley Street was sold? Is this a development that's in the nature of a development, like is this sort of profit?
No, I'm looking at living in it for myself.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Any further questions? Robert?
Yes, thank you. I had the opportunity to visit this property last summer, and I'm looking at the pictures today, and there's a number of things that I see no difference from last year to today. I'm wondering what the tipping point was from what we approved, and the tipping point being the decision made that now we should knock the place down. The northwest wall was bowed a foot when I saw it a year ago. I could see that the foundation underneath was probably a foot or so down in rubble. Most of the rot was visible, and I thought it was interesting at the time that you wanted to shore up the building, lift it, move it back, and put it on a new foundation. But I lauded that, and that's why we approved it. Now you've come back to us and asking to knock the place down. So I'm wondering what that tipping point was, like why this happened. Why did we look at it in the first place as moving an existing heritage property to let's just knock it down and build something that looks like a new heritage property?
And our intentions back there were to actually move it back, but now, were you just recently out to the property?
No, I wasn't. I was there in July, I guess it was, with Gail and
okay,
Lorraine and Mark.
So now we've actually opened up all the inside walls in the place, and there is a heck of a lot more rot and deterioration than we had anticipated. Because even when we had the company out that would move it, they said no problem. But now that we've opened it up, and even all the structures that are supporting the second story, it's all rotten, and we knew it wasn't in great shape, but we were unaware of just how bad the shape was. Now, when we actually open up some of the walls inside, you can actually see light to the outside where, over the years, water has just been pouring in. And because it was the plaster and lath, we just did not see that. And it just, a lot of this became more apparent once we opened it up. And now there's the difficulty of how do we actually make this into a new home. Yeah, it's just more came apparent once we actually opened up the walls in the house. And we're not trying to change the plans. We want to stick with the plans that we have right now, and just use new building materials, and anything that we can use from the existing, we will definitely take those materials, refurbish them, and use them, with the interior of the home.
Well, okay. Well, with all due respect, I think the plan has changed. Yeah, I know that you're saying that you're not changing the plan, but I believe you are. The plan was to keep the existing structure, so that plan has changed.
Yes, that without a doubt that has changed, and that's now that we've opened it up. It's now, how do we actually do that in a cost-effective way, and we don't see a cost-effective way to do that. And it's been a long delay. Like I said, with Delhi Avenue, we had the other delays when we with the foundation there, where we had to wait a number of months, where we had a piece of house just sitting there, and we couldn't do anything with it until we went through the proper channels. And so most of our attention and focus was on that property at the time, and now it's come time to address this property, 33 Bayview.
Andrew?
Maybe you didn't use the word, choose the words that you meant, but you've said a few times, how do we make this new home? You're making a new home by buying a new home, not an old home. Basically, you bought an old home.
Yep.
And in following up on Robert's point, I just want to remind the committee that early on, and I think either one of the first or second meeting, I made the point that I had seen a trend in the previous term of the committee where we had applicants come to us and ask us to allow certain modifications and plans to make a building more inhabitable, and we compromised on certain heritage considerations as part of trying to be agreeable and support people who were trying to preserve older homes and adapt them. So we would compromise, and that would be followed up in a period of months by the return to the committee with an application for demolition based on the fact that the plan we had approved was no longer possible because further investigation had uncovered this, and this, and this, and this. And 8 Shelley was another example of this. There were done a number of buildings that have been demolished after a plan was approved that we compromised, and then the plan we approved is used as a justification for the demolition. This just feels a lot like that. I think what we approved in the past is off the table. It's irrelevant. We approved that because we felt it was part of a plan that would keep the house. I specifically remember that being part of the conversation in that meeting. Our approval was conditional on that. And if that's no longer the case, then that entire plan, anything we approved in the past, is totally relevant to the conversation today. And I just, it's just another example of that. Robert, you highlighted it, but again, I did say this at the first or second meeting of this term, that was a trend that was existing, and we had to be very wary of it because by allowing these demolitions, we were setting precedent that was going to be used against us. And these old homes in Port Louis and elsewhere were going to continue to disappear. And this is not the prettiest house in Port Louis, but it is the one that's, a contributing home under the guidelines. and it deserves the same consideration as the pretty ones.
And I understand that. Unfortunately, you're more than welcome to come out and take a look at the existing conditions that are there at 33 Bayview, and it's completely rotten. And what else can I say to that? It's yeah, it's not safe.
Maria. Oh, sorry, Jürgen.
Yeah,
Maria.
no.
Thank you. I fully empathize with any homeowner who's discovered extensive rot and deterioration. It must be horrifying to see and a challenge to a theoretical budget. However, in order to make an objective decision, I would like to see firm quotations from a prospective contractor who is not fearful of taking on the work that would remediate the rot and the deterioration, and then objectively look at that cost to see if it's reasonable.
And what would be a reasonable cost?
I don't know how I or the committee would judge that, or if it's our purview to do that. But right now, if I'm understanding you correctly, Jürgen, you have not received any numbers, any quotations from contractors. They are fearful of taking on the job.
Yes.
But I would like, if I were you, I would still like to press them or others to come up with a figure and then objectively decide whether it was worth it to do it or not. And then is demolition an alternative because of that bottom line prohibitive cost? Right now, we're missing that value, that cost, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yes.
Okay.
Allow me to interrupt. John Crawley keeps putting his hand up and keeps getting missed.
We will go to John Crawley next then.
Well, if you
John?
don't mind, because some of us have had say.
Thanks, Gil.
You're welcome. Keep your hand
John.
up.
Sorry, John.
Thanks.
Jürgen, I have one question. Do you have the costs of what it would your original plan to lift the house up and move it back?
Yes, that I do have. It was $25,000 to just to pick up the house and move it back.
Well, that's relatively cheap, I think. But considering that you're basically replicating the house,
and that's all we want to do. It's just we want to replicate. Yes.
And
with new material.
And after going through the house a couple of weeks ago, and seeing the damage to the existing condition of the house, and based on my experience, I bet you that house was going to cost you $250,000 to $500,000 to renovate, lift the house, pour new foundation, renovate. I just think it's not feasible.
And I firmly believe that as well, because as you have pointed out, you've seen the actual damage, and it's not hard to see from what's there. How do you actually fix that without taking apart? And that's all we want to do. We just want to take the existing plan and just use new materials.
Maria, I saw your hand up. I don't know if you still have a question, but
no, thank you.
Did Lorraine have a question?
I did have a question, but it was similar to some of the things that have been said before. I thought that, okay, and I could be wrong, but when I think back to your previous plan, you were going to move that house back, but then weren't you going to build another house?
We had thought about that, but we withdrew that application.
Okay, because you were going to move that back and then buy a house for yourself to live in. right?
Yeah, now the plan is we're just gonna stick with the approved plan with moving it back, because right now where the house actually sits, it doesn't meet current setbacks because it's almost on top of the sidewalk.
Yeah. I think you could get a variance for that though, because a variance was just passed for a building in Meryton that was not the proper setback, and that was approved. So I don't think that's a major piece, but I think I remember not being in favor and speaking out, not being in favor, because I remember saying to you that, if you're just going to move that back and build your new house, then I feel like you're doing it just to build this new house rather than to save this old house, this is heritage type building. So
And we still have the plans that incorporate that old house. It's still going to look the same what was approved. It's just we're going to do it with new materials.
Are there any other questions? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Lorraine.
I think Mark at one time put his hand up. Mark?
I think I put my like a thumbs up. I was agreeing.
Okay.
I think I think I just thought about putting my thumb up. Maybe I did. I know this. I've been in this property now a couple times. I know that people, if foundation is an issue, if any structural damage is an issue, like even my house and a house that I'm renovating right behind me is built in the 30s, and we had a lot of structural issues here too, and we figured them out that weren't too unsimilar than the ones there. So I know with the people that I know that can be rectified in that building. And also they're planning on building a new foundation and just moving it a few feet. And you can dig down and rebuild foundations in situ as well. You just do it in sections, and it's no problem there either.
Yeah, how do you, the problem is, how do you actually dig underneath with the house in situ to pour that in? Right now, that house, we can't even lift it up just because the top beam or the top plate and everything is completely rotten. Once you start moving that and it shifts, it's just not going to support it.
Yeah, you fix those first, right? And then make sure the framing is sound, and then you lift it up from there. Now, just down the street, they're rebuilding a foundation in sections, just the same as what you'd like to do there too.
But even so, with the outside shiplap that's there, which quite a bit of it is actually rotten, you still have to pull all that existing shell off to be able to access I guess the posts or the 2x4s inside to actually replace them.
Yeah, you'd have to take some off to get some shoring in there for sure, and then those can be put back into place.
And again, at what cost, right? And if we want to just basically keep the existing plan and just use new building materials, it's still, you're still going to have the same physical, or I guess the same aesthetic on the property, but it's going to be all new materials.
Yeah, and I think you said the key word there was at what cost. I think that should be figured out first, and then weigh new build to the repair cost.
Well, it will be a heck of a lot more money. There's no doubt. With the cost to lift and to shore up, it will be very expensive. I don't have a dollar figure. Even new construction right now, it's as you know, it's not cheap. And then to factor in this, we're just looking to the existing plan and just do it in new materials. That's all. You're not going to have any. Even once the building, or once we do the work, new materials or using the old, we are still going to have the same aesthetic as with the plans. Nothing's going to change. It's still going to be. It's going to be the same.
Andrew?
I'm sorry, but you're not making a good argument when you say that. I mean, pick any significant heritage building. Everyone in your mind, think of your favorite designated building in St. Catharines or elsewhere. And now I tell you, I'm going to go in, I'm going to tear it down, I'm going to build it back and make it look the same. Can I get you to sign off on that?
Not the same.
No. Nobody's going to say yes to that. It's not the same thing. That preservation isn't about tearing it down and making it look the same or close to the same. That's not preservation. That's not what the whole purpose of this is.
And any of them,
we can talk this. We can continue to talk this. It seems to be that everyone would like to see some financial indication. If you come back with proper quotes from proper people that shows that this is prohibitively expensive, I will support you. I will say yes. But right now, today, I have to say no. And if you want to, I think we should go. I don't think anybody has said anything new in the last little while, except maybe Mark's points there. Yeah, he made some good points about how to do it. But other than that, we're just talking in circles. So maybe we should just vote on this, and then you can, if the committee votes against you, you can take it to council because we're just an advisory committee, and maybe they'll support you. Or you can go back and come back to us with numbers that may convince us. If you and John Crawley are right, yeah, absolutely will convince us. But again, even John said $250,000. Compared to the cost of a new build, and with property values being what they are in Port Dalhousie, $250,000 is a bargain. If you can get it fixed for that, you should.
okay, but that's just to address that section of the house. That's not including.
Well, but you don't know that, and I
The
don't
rest.
know that.
You
You
don't
don't know
know.
that, and
So-
I don't know that. Neither of us is qualified to say that. So let's get something on paper from someone who is qualified to say that, to say what the number is. Then we can make an informed decision. And as I said, I'll be the first one to support you if the quotes back up what you suspect is true. But not today. I can't do it.
Through the chair, I believe Rachel had her hand up, and then I see John's hand. So
Yeah, I agree with what Andrew is saying. I think the prudent thing to do would be to have an evidence-based approach here. We're throwing figures around and assuming what's going to be more or less, and I personally do not feel comfortable agreeing with something before I know the actual value of it. I think our guidelines, while there is some flexibility in them, they don't exactly say, yeah, demolition's a great idea. The wording is pretty, I would argue, strongly against it. And I think Andrew has suggested a pragmatic, and Mark to an extent, a pragmatic approach to this, which is looking at some, evidence to support, and then we can make a further discussion. I noted that I think even in your previous application last year, I don't think there was a quote provided at the time for the cost of moving the house. There was an engineer's statement, similar to the one in this one. So these quotes, I think, go a long way and are quite helpful for us making a determination. That's all I want to say.
I'm not sure, but yeah, we definitely we had our numbers for just to pick up and move the existing structure. We definitely had a quote for that, because obviously before we went to you, we wanted to make sure that yes, this was something we could actually do. And so there's a Chambers movers out in Welland. They were the company that actually does this, and they gave us our quote.
And through the chair, I've seen the quote for moving it. It either came in after the meeting last time or it was included in the package last time. I can't recall now because it's been quite a while, but I can confirm there was a quote for the move at least. John Crawley, and then I have a couple ideas after this, unless there are other questions.
Just one more comment. But by the time you're finished renovating this house based on its current condition, you're not going to have much left of the original house at all.
No, that's right. There will not be, because you've seen the rot yourself, and there won't be much left.
Are there any other questions? And then I might chime in. So it sounds like there's maybe two options here. One is to proceed and have a vote with the information that we have before us. That recommendation, based on the information that we have, would go to council. I don't know what that vote will be at this moment, but it sounds like the winds are shifting in a certain direction. And so Jurgen could, decide to proceed and with that recommendation. And have that go to council and let council decide whether or not they want to side with the Heritage Committee or not. Or if Jurgen would like to have the support of the committee and have a stronger report to council, he could go back, get some quotes, and defer the application and come back to us. Depending on how quickly he can get the quotes, he can come back to us within a month, because obviously we meet at the end of every month. So I'll sort of ask Jurgen which he would prefer, and go from there. Not to put you on the spot, Jurgen, but unfortunately, sounds like that's how things are going to be right here.
Yeah, unfortunately, I would have to speak with my partner on this, to come up with an answer.
We can also we could do two things. We can do two votes. I think I don't think there's anything that says we can't. So we can have a vote on a motion that, whether to support the application or not. We can also have a motion to support a deferral of the application, and then you can go back to your partner and with that information and decide how to proceed. I think that maybe is the best route to go. It ensures we've covered all our bases and a route forward. Does that work for you, Jurgen?
So let me be clear. So a vote for deferral.
Yeah, so we can do one of two. We can either, so vote right now based on the information that we have, and that vote would essentially be yay or nay as to whether the committee supports demolition. That would go to council next month. Based on what I'm hearing, it sounds like it's probably going a certain direction. And so you'd be going to council with that recommendation, which, essentially council would then probably have to go against what this committee has recommended in order to approve your application. Or we can defer it and you can get the quotes that you need. And it sounds like that's the main concern, is how much would it cost to do the work. If you can get those quotes, we can have you back within a month. And then we can have this discussion again with that dollar amount in front of us. And then proceed to go to council. Essentially, you're looking at a month delay potentially, but you could potentially have a better report to council in your favor, depending on how the money works out.
And then we would still have to, I guess, go to council after that.
Yeah, so you're essentially just moving things down a month. So if it's deferred a month, if you're able to get those quotes, if you can get them quickly, we can have you back here in a month from now. And then it takes us a month to then get it to council, just the way the agendas work out. But essentially, you're delaying it a month, depending on how quickly you're able to get your quotes.
So as far as, I guess you want a quote to actually, I guess still reinforce the existing structure so that it could be picked up to be moved. And then is that basically what? I just want to be clear on what quotes you want here.
Not to be moved, but to be repaired to the degree they could be kept. Moving is a second thing that's optional. We're concerned with the preservation of the building, and if you want to move it, that's a separate issue.
Okay.
Yeah, through the chair, the committee in principle has kind of already agreed that moving the building, based on the previous application that was before the committee, that they were supportive of that idea as long as the original building was maintained, right? And so if you're able to get a quote for what would it cost to be able to, remedy all of the issues that there are right now, I think that's what everybody's looking for. And then once we have that information, or once the committee has that information, then they can make a determination as to whether or not your overall scheme would make sense as well. And I don't mean scheme in a negative way. I mean just in your strategy. Yeah.
But even the remedy is still very little of the materials that are existing right now are even salvageable or worth using. You've seen it yourself.
Yeah,
it is in really rough shape. So we're still going to have to basically replace 80% of it.
Well, and I think through the chair, that would be maybe part of the work that the whoever you are getting a quote from, they'd be able to look at it and say, it looks like it's going to be, 75% of the material needs to be removed, or that's all stuff that we can factor in, or that the committee can factor in into their decision. So the more information, obviously, the better. It's always to provide more rather than less. But I ultimately, it sounds like the committee would prefer to have a little bit more information in front of them. So.
Okay, well, I guess that's for the route we would have to go then.
Mark, you raised your hand there.
Yeah, I guess just another quick comment was that if the building is not being moved to accommodate a new lot and building, it could be kept in the same spot and saving that $25,000-$30,000, right? That can go towards the repairs as well. I mean, it doesn't need to be moved at this point to accommodate a new building. So there's some just a comment that there's some money
for
to
sure.
save there.
Yeah, for sure. And we still need to address what's underneath.
So Jürgen, sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
So
Jürgen. I apologize.
We still have to address what's underneath and what's actually holding up the building, which is completely inadequate. Yeah,
so through the chair, I think so we can proceed with Jürgen, I know you need to speak to your partner. Would you prefer that we proceed with both votes, so a vote to determine whether or not the committee is in favor or against, and also a vote to defer? Is that I just want to make sure that you're okay with whatever direction, and so that way everybody's clear about what's happening.
I guess if we can get votes on both, certainly.
Okay.
That's all I can do right now.
Brian, are you still with us?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Okay. So yeah, I guess we do both votes.
So I will put one motion up, and then I will have to quickly type up another motion, but I will do that.
So the first motion will be for the recommending the approval of the demolition.
Yep. So the SCHAC recommends approval of the proposed demolition of 33 Bayview Drive. And just to remind everybody, you can make the motion. It doesn't mean that you're in favor of it. It's just somebody has to make the motion.
So who wishes to make the motion?
I'll make the motion. Why not?
Andrew, thank you. And all in favor of the motion?
So that does not pass. Okay, and if you just bear with me for 1 second, I'll make sure that. Okay, I think I have something. Let's see if this works for everybody. So that the SCHAC recommends deferring the application for the proposed demolition of 33 Bayview Drive until further information is provided about the cost to retain the building through fixing the existing issues with the foundation and wood structure. Is that a motion that works for everybody? And Jürgen, is that clear to you in terms of the direction?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I just want to make sure that everybody's content with that.
Sounds like a reasonable motion.
Yep.
So does somebody wish to make that motion? Lorraine? Okay. And all in favor of that? That's done.
Yep, looks like that passes. Jürgen, I'll be in touch tomorrow. We can talk about next steps.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Jürgen.
Okay, bye-bye now.
Bye.
So moving on to 7.4, the Zion Baptist Church plaque.
Yeah, through the chair really quickly, because I know we're getting short on time, and I also want to give Adrian a chance to be able to speak to an item later. But the Zion Church, you might remember they were before us. Some members of the congregation were before us back in February, asking for a plaque for their property, or for to commemorate the former church, which was torn down in the 50s. So through some work behind the scenes, tried to figure out a solution to that. Unfortunately, the property owner on Geneva Street is not open to having a plaque on their property at this time, which is understandable. And then the committee as well did not think that it was appropriate for the plaque to be located on Raymond Street, where their current congregation is. But there was the option thrown out, and I think Brian maybe asked about it, was would the Salem Chapel be willing to host a plaque temporarily because of their close connection? And so members of the congregation have been in touch with Rochelle at the Salem Chapel, and she's open to the idea. And so, which is great, which is good news. And down the road, if the owner of the property where the original church was located, if they were amenable to it, we could always move the plaque over to there. But essentially, we do have an option right now. And so I wanted to kind of put that forward to the group and see if we can add the Zion Church plaque as basically to our list of ongoing plaques that we are looking to work on, and potentially have that done perhaps maybe even this year if we could. But I'll open it to the floor.
Lorraine?
James, while we're on this topic, would it be possible to have a meeting of the plaquing committee? We did we did have one, and it seemed to function well.
Yeah, so through the chair, as soon as we initiate this, and there were a couple other plaques that we had talked about just getting started on. I've just had a lot going on in terms of just heritage districts and all this other stuff, so haven't been able to get that initiated, but we can definitely start that up pretty soon, and we would obviously need that to be started up so that we can do the work on this project and the oily fountain and some of the other ones that we discussed before.
That would be terrific. And just a note, did anybody read the letter to the editor in the paper today from John Burtniak about suggesting a plaque for a location on Niagara Street?
Yes, I read it.
So I think there's lots for the plaquing committee to discuss, as well as the larger group.
Andrew?
Yeah, I know that the property that is the former site was for sale at one point around the time we discussed this. When you say the owners of the property are agreeable, did the property sell? Are these the new owners, the old owners? Do you know?
Through the chair, I don't know if the property has been sold. I spoke to, I believe, maybe the owner who was trying to sell the property. And they maybe because the property was for sale, they didn't want to add this to the property at the time because it wasn't really, they didn't foresee themselves being the owner. I don't know if that's changed. I think if that site were ever to be developed in the future, whether it's a single property or a single house residence or something like that, or a larger development, it would have to come through the planning department anyways. So we would be able to at that time potentially talk to the new owner about moving the plaque over. So I think that might be a good option for us.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that in the future, I mean, being the property in the state that's in, I totally understand,
Yeah.
But
no, I fully agree, and I think I think everybody agrees that it would be great to see it in that site. I also asked the neighbor at the hair salon next door if they would be open to it, and they thought, it really should belong on its original site. And I completely agree with that. And I think the Salem Chapel is kind of the next best option for us right now because it does, a big part of the story does involve the Salem Chapel too. So, yeah, are there any other questions? If not, I will put a motion up on the screen. And so that the SCHAC receives the information about the Zion Baptist Church plaque from myself, James Nielsen, and recommends proceeding with the creation of the plaque at the Salem Chapel.
So does someone wish to make that motion?
I'd like to make that motion. I've been involved with the BME for years, so yes.
And all in favor? Okay, Ben?
Great.
I assume we'll be crafting the text for this plaque in-house?
We will be, and perhaps with some help from our next speaker.
Hi, everybody. Thanks very much for having me back. Just quickly, I thought you might like to hear some highlights about some programming activity that you might enjoy hearing about. We've been very, 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 very busy with school groups So that's really, really good news, especially the last couple of years been, well, during lockdowns anyway, was really quiet. But some highlights you might like to hear about. It seems like every professional association is having its conference in Niagara Falls this year, and most of them have had field trips to here at the museum. But one special one was the Ontario Association of Architects. They had their conference last week, and I took 3 groups of them to Mountain Locks Park, and they were absolutely thrilled with the visit to the park. And also, if they had cleanup materials, chainsaws, pruning shears, they probably would have got to work right away on cleaning up the locks. So they were very excited about seeing the locks and taking a hike through. It was really rewarding as well to have people who are very enthusiastic about the canal. Our spring community walks sold out, and our summer community walks registration is open. So there's summer community walks and kids programs happening all through the summer. And then today was a very special day. I'm in my programming uniform. We had our very first program at the Lakeside Park Carousel today with 2 classes of grade 1s, and we have 5 more to go in June. So it was very exciting. We programmed the carousel a long time ago, but now that it's fallen back under historical services, we're taking on responsibility for programming it for school groups, and they had a blast. And they all know all about the carousel and the Loof Lion. So we are very happy to be growing the next probably the next set of friends of the carousel, if not lots of appreciation for the carousel today. And they didn't run at all, which is great. Rule number 1, no running. They were very good. So that was great. So I thought you'd be happy to hear all of that. And then James asked me just to quickly talk about history and site. So the 4 panels that the committee helped to support and pay for have been installed, and I think folks saw some pictures. Installation went very well. We're well practiced now. Usually it takes us a minute to figure it out, but we did a good job this time. It's not the easiest machinery to use, but the panels are well. I was downtown on Saturday for my community walk with the downtown association, and the panels still look good. There's a dent in one small dent in the previous one there, James, but that's normal. It's normal, and that's fine. We have replacements for that. So that's part of the money went to paying for the second and third panels. So that's all good. And folks are really enjoying them. And the folks on my tour on Saturday, but as well as some other downtown community walks, have been mentioning them. And having the program expanded in this way has been really great. So we'll hopefully keep expanding it as we go. So thank you for that. And I think that's it. And if there's any questions or anything like that, I'm happy to take those.
Thanks, Adrian.
One thing I will add to Adrian's presentation is that Adrian and I have been talking behind the scenes about some of the different ideas that we've discussed at the committee. What we've learned, though, is that some of the ideas are much bigger than what him and I can just handle ourselves, and that it's going to take kind of staff from other departments and other people that are at the museum and as part of cultural services to kind of figure out some of these solutions, because we haven't really had a very strong coordinated plaque program across the city, really, and it's something that I think we all are kind of in agreement we kind of need to figure out. So some of the ideas that were thrown around a few months ago still on our radar, but it's going to take some time to sort some of those out. So, but we had a good chat a few weeks ago, and we got the first foot going. So
yeah, and there's some progress, and hopefully by the time the placking committee meets, I might have some more updates about a direction. Probably no action, but just updates about a direction. Part of the challenge, as James mentioned, was that the placking comes from a variety of sources. So like the railroad folks, us, and the parks staff on the other side of Parks and Recreation, the Culture Department as well. So there's a variety. Tourism as well has signage. They're not technically historical plaques, but there's a variety of people, and having that coordinated across the departments is, I'm sure you can imagine, it's not the easiest thing. So, but it's something that all of those teams are aware of, and we're just trying to figure out the best way to get that. And of course, those conversations take a long time. So thank you for your patience with that.
And I would add that the 2029 Welland Canal Task Force has a goal of making all of the plaques similar, same design, same font, that kind of logo, like a common logo throughout all the plaques that have anything to do with the Welland Canal, including one that we talked about earlier, which was the Collier Mills. So that's one of the things we're worried about as well.
Yeah, and it's a real challenge because as I mentioned, like different departments are responsible for different pieces of tangible things that you would see on a trail or at a site. So for example, like the trailhead signs would be designed by one section, and the interpretive plaques would probably end up being designed by another section. And so just trying to figure out that is just involves conversations. That's all. So it's it's good. It's a good conversation to have. So it's great.
Are there any other questions?
No, but James, at the end, I was going to ask if you would add to the next meeting a report from the 2029 Welland Canal Task Force. And I'd like to talk a little bit about it at our next meeting.
Sure, that would be great.
I'll just tag that on to Adrian's talk.
No, that sounds like a good idea. We haven't had an update from the task force in a while. So
yeah.
If there's no other questions, then I guess we need to receive Adrian's report.
What report?
Motion just to receive Adrian's report. I didn't craft one. It's a very brief one. Yeah.
I'm just trying to move along because.
Yeah. So Gail's made the motion. So we just need a vote.
All in favor? Okay, done.
That passes. Great. Thanks, Adrian.
I think, can I defer my Darby Hofstetter discussion till next meeting, just so we get out of here sooner?
Yeah, that's fine by me.
So you want to talk about the downtown HCD?
Yeah, through the chair, just really quickly. So our surveys closed on Victoria Day. We ended up with almost 130 surveys, which is amazing. I think when back about a month ago, I was telling our heritage consultants that we were at 60 and their eyes bulged. And so when I told them last week that the number doubled, they were beside themselves. They were like, oh, that's a lot more work than we expected. So that's great though, because that means that we're getting a lot of input from the community, and that's what council is going to want to hear. And so I haven't gone through them all yet because 130 is a lot and there's been a lot going on, but generally, it's a range of opinions. There are people who are concerned, there are people who are really excited, but that's good. You want a cross section of opinions and thoughts and whatnot. So that's been really great, exceeded expectations. And then some of you might be wondering when the downtown Heritage Committee, or sorry, Heritage Conservation District Study Task Force is going to be starting. It will be hopefully in June. So on Monday night, we had council essentially approve the terms of reference for the group. And so we have members from the BIA who are going to be part of this committee. There's four representatives of the BIA. There's the executive director of the BIA, Councillor McPherson, and then 3 members of this committee who were previously voted on. So there will be 8 or 9 people on the committee, and I would like to meet in June, and so I will be in touch hopefully tomorrow with everybody to see if we can coordinate dates and times and figure out what would work for everybody. So it's a very quick update, but there's still a lot going on behind the scenes, and it's pretty exciting. So if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
So not seeing no questions, then I guess we need a motion to receive your report.
Yep.
Mark, you're making the motion? Okay, all in favor? Okay, done. Gail, did you want to do 7.8 or defer?
Yes, no, I would like to get to a few questions. I'll keep it really short. I saw on the Thorold News last week about Morningstar Mill closing all summer, essentially. And I was surprised that it wasn't in the Standard and that the city hadn't put out anything in their Garden City Current. I talked to Carla Mackey, and she said this has been on the books for years and it stopped by COVID. And why we didn't get information about it, sort of, so people would know that it's closed all summer, she couldn't explain, but she said it's been on the books for a long, long time. I also have questions about two things in Port Dalhousie. I hope David Bergen is still with us, so somebody can answer. The trees that were culled on Martindale Pond, there were apparently 3 individuals who went to court. Is there any update on what happened, whether about those 3 things, the trees being culled? The third thing is, I noticed in the Port Reporter that I sent to all of you yesterday that there's a Port Bicentennial group. Does anyone know how that group was formed and how people got their names on it? So 3 things: Morningstar Mill solved, except I think communication from either the Standard or something could have been a lot better. And does anyone know anything about those mature trees that were on public property and taken down? And number 3 is the Port Dalhousie Bicentennial Committee. How did it get formed and who's on it?
So through the chair, I think I can answer 2 of the 3.
Okay.
So the mill, we previously had the mill before the old permit committee, and that might have been almost 2 years ago now, I think.
Yes.
So because they had to get approval for the alterations that were being done.
Yeah.
So that's where it came in to us. So
I
it
didn't
takes
know that
time
because
to get all
I
the,
wasn't on the permit committee, so
yeah, and
yeah,
to be honest,
yeah.
I wasn't aware that the work was kicking off until very recently.
Okay.
But yeah, that's been long in the works, and it got approval from the
Okay.
Heritage Permit Committee.
Okay.
That's exciting. It's great that finally going to do some work on that. The Port Bicentennial Committee, I'm actually on that committee, and I believe it's just a volunteer committee. I was asked because as a representative of the city to be part of it, but I'm pretty sure, and I don't know. Marty Mako has been the one kind of leading the way on it. I don't know who he's reached out to or how he's disseminated information to everybody, but I believe Marty used to be a member of the Heritage Committee, and some of you might know him. But I think it's the case where it's a lot of times the more the merrier. I've never seen them say, sorry, you can't attend a meeting. So if anybody is interested in coming out and attending, let me know. I can pass your name along to Marty, and I'm sure he'd be glad to have you. I know we're meeting on Saturday. We're just meeting at one of the restaurants downtown just to talk about some issues, or not downtown, downtown Port Dalhousie, I guess you could say, just to talk about some of the issues. And the bicentennial, I believe, is 2 years from now. It's 2026. And so it's just a lot of it is just the prep work for that, because they're planning a lot of big kind of celebrations and whatnot. Right now, we're talking about things like logos. So it's very early days. But yeah, hopefully that helps.
Could you let this committee know who's on besides Marty Mako and yourself, the list of names?
Yeah, so through the chair, so Hank Beekhouse is on the committee.
Okay.
Yeah, so is Councillor Garcia. He comes to the meetings. And there are some other members who I personally don't know. I've met them a couple times through the meeting, and to be honest, I don't know their names off the top of my head. But it seems like it's just people who are local to Port Dalhousie and are keen to be involved.
Okay.
But yeah, like I said, if anybody in this group is interested, let me know. I'll forward your name to Marty, and we'll make sure that you're included in the future.
Okay. And the trees, there's nobody knows what happened with the trees. David Bergen?
David Bergen knows nothing about the trees. I'm vaguely aware that the trees came down illegally, but I
Yeah.
don't know anything about the outcomes.
And I remember talking to Carlos that there could be huge costs. And I also remember talking through City Hall that anybody could find out what happened in court simply by asking and going down to the courthouse and finding out. But I mean, is there any other way to find out what's happened with
Yeah,
that?
through the chair, so because it's not really a heritage issue, I don't know a lot about it. I know it happened, but I don't know what the end result is of it. And I don't believe Tammy is still in the meeting. She might have had to go elsewhere. So she probably would have known a little bit more than I would. I'll take it back and find out what I can find out, and then I can
Inquire?
bring it back to the committee
Okay.
next month. Yeah,
Thank you. Thanks.
no problem.
Okay.
Okay, so we've got no subcommittee updates for today. No items of correspondence. So I guess the next thing is our June 27th meeting. Same bat time, same bat station. So I guess we need a motion to adjourn if there's nothing else. Dr. Bergen, thank you. And all in favor? Done.
Okay, great, everybody. Thanks for the great meeting.
Thanks,
See you all
everybody.
soon.
Bye now.
Thanks.